Imagine a world where you were given a small monthly income, free of tax, that would cover your most basic living costs. Would you continue to work? Stop working entirely? This concept is called Universal Basic Income, or UBI for short, and it could become a reality reasonably soon. So what is UBI? Well, at its core, UBI is a model for providing all citizens of a country with a given sum of money, regardless of their income, resources, or employment status. The purpose of UBI is to prevent or reduce poverty and increase equality among citizens. But why has it become such a widely discussed social concept all of a sudden? It was first brought to the United States Congress in the 1960s as a concept under the name of the Family Assistance Program. UBI has gained momentum with some of history's notable names supporting the concept, such as Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King Jr., Marshall McLuhan, Elon Musk, and Mark Zuckerberg, just to name a few. Most of these individuals support UBI as a stepping stone to equality, and to bridge the ever-increasing wealth gap.
We should explore ideas like universal basic income to make sure that everyone has a cushion to try new ideas.
But there are some, like Elon Musk, that see UBI as an inevitable outcome for society due to the looming threat of automation.
I think ultimately we will have to have some kind of universal basic income. I don't think we're going to have a choice.
So how would UBI work? And what are some of the major arguments for and against? Well, for starters, minimum UBI is when the government would cover each and every individual's basic cost of living. In North America specifically, this would amount to about $1,000 per month. The idea here is that when an individual's basic living costs are taken care of, it would help reduce economic stress and panic, increase the person's standard of living, and help them improve their financial situation. Just to put the economic incentive for UBI into perspective, 2008 found new support for the concept in light of the economic crisis. At the time, the US had a total of $12.58 trillion in household debt. The more troubling aspect, however, is wages for the vast majority of workers have stayed static or barely moved in the last 40 years, even after the economic crisis. Meanwhile, the wage growth for the top members of society has grown 138% since 1979. This drastic difference in growth is what many believe UBI can partially solve. Now you may ask, if everyone can afford to live without working, wouldn't everyone just stop to work, or even spend their money on drugs or alcohol? Well, it turns out that this isn't the case. In case studies done in 2007 in Ontario involving UBI, only 1% of the participants remain unemployed by the end of the study, and the majority of that 1% was new mothers using the money to stay at home and look after their child. Welfare is a system that tries to accomplish a similar goal as UBI, but due to the ineffectiveness and bureaucratic nature of welfare, the program ends up being a poverty trap instead. Usually, if an individual tries to improve their financial situation, they begin to lose benefits and are taxed more heavily than if they had stayed on welfare, which usually amounts to them earning significantly less than they were previously. UBI isn't all sunshine and daisies though. One of the biggest issues against it is that we literally can't afford it. In most cases, $1,000 a person in the US would add up to around 70% of the total GDP. Some solutions to balance this have been considered, such as increasing the tax on corporations and wealthy individuals, but this wouldn't work because they could move their operations elsewhere and pay taxes to another government, while increasing the price of goods across the board. This puts us in an awkward situation. Instead of UBI, or a system of the same nature, some people would rather just improve upon or incentivize education and training programs for the workforce, which will allow everyone to become more prepared for the future. The problem here, however, is it doesn't take the economic stress off low-income individuals who may also have been born into poverty and have no means of escaping. While both sides have very convincing arguments for and against the topic, there may actually be no escaping some form of UBI in the near future. A major concern that has been growing since the Industrial Revolution is the looming threat of automation in the workforce. Elon Musk specifically is an advocate for some kind of UBI in the future. He believes that UBI will be the inevitable outcome that we arrive at as a society because there just won't be any jobs left for us to do.
These are not things that I wish would happen. These are simply things that I think probably will happen. So with automation, there will come abundance. There will be almost everything will get very cheap.
To further support his stance, it has been predicted that sometime in the next 20 years or so, somewhere between 40 to 50% of all jobs in the US alone will become replaced by automation. This means that out of the 156 million workers expected to actively be employed in the US, up to 78 million people in America alone could lose their jobs. AI in particular will disrupt entire markets and change the fabric of society. While daunting, this could be an opportunity to create a society that is better in ways unimaginable a decade ago, without the need for human labor to support the population. Universal basic income may be a viable solution for AI replacing labor. If everyone is given a wage that is enough to live off, mankind will have transcended work as a society. People would be free to live and pursue knowledge and goals that they truly desire, as opposed to what they need to do to survive.
The harder challenge, much harder challenge, is how do people then have meaning? Like a lot of people, they derive their meaning from their employment. So if you don't have, if you're not needed, if there's not a need for your labor, how do you, what's the meaning? Do you have meaning? Do you feel useless? That's a much harder problem to deal with.
The alternative, however, is extreme inequality. As it is, according to the OECD, the gap between the rich and the poor keeps widening, and in its 34 states, the richest 10% of the population earn 9.6 times the income of the poorest 10%. Governments may find it difficult to prepare for such events. Through artificial intelligence, many incredible opportunities could come about. However, one must consider the price at which these innovations are achieved. AI can create a world where jobs that typically take days or months to complete can be done in a matter of hours. It can render some jobs entirely obsolete, leaving skilled workers unemployed and searching for a way to function in society. So where does this leave us then? What are the next steps forward? The truth is, we just don't know. UBI is still a fairly immature concept and has yet to be fully developed so that it works in the way it was intended. The fact of the matter is that society and humans are treading on uncharted territory. Depending on how societies and governments handle the changing plane of technology and social structure, future generations may live in fashions completely different from the modern world. In the end, governments will have to find a balance for money, hope, and desperation, as we venture into a never-before-seen social and economic landscape where we could have mass unemployment, or be one step closer to an ideal, utopian society.